Welcome, everybody.
Hey, hey. Good boy, Tucker.
Work smarter where you want.
This is learning at its most fun.
So everyone, hello, welcome. My name is Catherine Beltran. I am one of the trainers here at Redtail Technology. And today we're actually going to be covering hopefully a really good start into 2021 with how to tackle database cleanup. So I know I can safely speak for everyone on the training team that we are certainly glad 2020 is over. And I'm sure that is kind of the sentiment for a lot of people, if not everyone. And we really want to start this year off on a good foot. And that's really where we start off with this whole concept of cleanup. Now, I know everyone's kind of sitting there like, ugh, cleanup. I don't even like sweeping my floors or doing vacuuming. But when it comes to the Redtail CRM, this is really what's going to make sure we have an effective database. So it's hopefully not going to be too monotonous. It'll really be one of those things where we take that time and build the database into something that we can really use on a daily basis. So there's going to be quite a bit we'll cover, and I'll try to make it as easy as possible. And as you can see from the agenda here, we've got a pretty lengthy list, but it does all really start with the managed database list. And again, we are going to switch from this PowerPoint over to our CRM, so I will definitely show you some changes that actually did occur within the last year. And I really do feel like it does make it easier, so we'll go through a couple examples and really show how we can get some of that maybe old 2020 dirty data that we don't want in there anymore and get things really up to speed. So let's actually go ahead and hop into our CRM. So I'm going to slide on over. And here we are on our Today page. So if this is your normal default login like we have it here, or if you're on somewhere else, the good news is this first step here is going to be kind of universal for all of us. We're all going to start by clicking our name in the top right-hand corner. Now we're going to come on down to this third option here for me, which is manage your account. Now, before I actually jump into the managed database list, I do want to preface here really quick. It is something that's called admin controlled. Therefore, some of you might not see this section down here that says admins only. Now, that's not a bad thing. I don't want to say like, oh, that's because you don't get that. We want to control how many people actually can access this managed database list, especially if you're coming from an office that has 15 plus users. Imagine if every single one of you had access to it, there'd be too many cooks in the kitchen. So again, limited as far as the admins go, and that is a good thing. But we're going to again start by our name in the top right, manage your account, and scroll all the way to the bottom. We'll see admins only, and then manage database list is that second option. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that here. And then once we're here, just as a kind of recap, everything that's on the right-hand side is a field somewhere in the CRM that is customizable. Now, I always like to start off with statuses, only because this really first question that we always kind of get is, who is this person to me, or who is this business? This is where we can establish who's an active client, who's a prospect, who's a deceased client, who's an inactive, who's maybe just a spouse. So this list is something that you can always customize. With that also said, sometimes we customize it and don't realize that we put kind of duplicate entries. So as we can see at the first few options here, we have active, and then we also have active client. That's the same thing for us. So it is common for me to go into a database and go, the first thing I'd start off with cleanup is this list. And that's again, because when we actually want to apply that status for a contact, if I have two options that mean the same thing, I'm going to sit there and go, well, which one's the right one? Now, before I kind of show this little new magic trick, I should say, for this piece, formerly, you used to have to run an advanced search before deleting it, making sure no one actually has that value, bulk updating it, and then coming back here and deleting it. Now, again, we try to make things a little bit easier on us. And because of the little bit easy access now, I can come over to this action icon and delete this first. I know everyone's kind of panicking inside already, but active client's the one I want to keep. This one again is just that duplicate unnecessary access list. I'm going to come on down here and click delete. So when I click here, I now have a new pop-up that says, hey, before you actually just delete this value, do you want to make sure that if anyone has that, it now represents something else? And that's where I'm going to say, yes, if anyone had active previously, I want them to go ahead and now have active client as their status value. So again, instead of having to hop off this page, run an advanced search, bulk update, and then come back, I can actually just do it from here now. So I know it's kind of a little interesting because we're so used to having more extra steps, but now again, you just come over here, click delete. So let me do that again really quick just before I delete that. Again, action icon over here, delete, apply new value, active client, and then delete. Now, kind of another thing that usually pops up with managed database lists, maybe it's not only duplicates, but maybe we added values back here originally that we haven't really touched. We added it a year ago, we added it months ago, and again, no one really rolled it out. So an example, sometimes I see people add lead, but then they actually classify everyone as a prospect anyways. So no one has this value. You could technically just delete it and again, reapply it just like I did there. But if it's something where it's like, you know what, how do I know for sure if someone is actually using that? That is where an advanced search is going to come into effect. Same can be said that this kind of duplication or unsure values will come about with categories. It can even come up with keywords. It can also come up with activities and notes categories. So again, sometimes I'll see a lot of enthusiasm. We'll come back here, we'll add the world back here as our options. And then when we actually add those notes or those activities, we never touch them because again, we just put them as something else. So I will go into an advanced searching in just a second, but as far as for like note categories and activities that we might have saved, if we're not sure if someone's using one of these categories before deleting it, because again, I know we probably sit there and go, that seems so definitive. I'm not comfortable doing that yet. I can always come over here and edit, put maybe like the Z in front so it takes it from the top of the list all the way to the bottom. And again, that's just one extra step I can do. I can leave it as is, but just so I know for a fact it's at the bottom there, I put it right down here. And then that's where I can come over to reports on the left, come about halfway down the page. So I'm going to click on notes report. So we have notes by contact. And then this is where I can run a search to say, hey, did anyone actually use an activity, put in a note, put a workflow with that particular category? So I can come over to filter. I'm going to say all the way to beginning of January 1, 2020 through the 31st, the full year. Did anyone actually use a particular example? So I'm going to go ahead and pick that Z business because I feel like no one used it. Come over here. I'm going to leave everything else as all, apply my filter, and I get absolutely nothing. So it's again, just confirming kind of that deep fear that I had that we added too much. And then at this point, I could delete it. Now, if you're still not sure, if you're still afraid to click that delete button, thinking that someone might, that is where you are going to want to communicate with your office and say, hey, does anyone use this? Does anyone plan to? And then when you get all of those no's or maybe a yes, that's when you can make that change, either back and remove the Z or go ahead and delete that category. Now, if there was some that popped up, because again, maybe we aren't sure about really our whole list, this is really where we can come in here and just decide, hey, I'm no longer worried about that Z business. I just want to know, did we even use account support or should I have broken that down? Are people putting it as something else? And again, this is where I get more of that positive. Yes, we are using it. That affirms I'm going to keep that. So again, when it comes to starting off with a clean database, come up to your name, manage your account, and manage database list is really that starting point. So again, if it is something like a duplicate, feel free to delete immediately and reapply that value. If it's something where you're just not sure, that is where, again, you can use kind of that Z, drop it to the bottom of the list, or leave it as is, totally optional, and then run that notes by contact report. Now, what if it's not necessarily a note? What if it is something like a category where we put in a category and, we have something in here like this professional connector. And again, I'm still not sure if anyone's using it. That's where I can even do something like an advanced search that'll help us find things that are either A, missing, or find if anyone is actually using that value, or again, it helps us find specifics as a whole. So this time, instead of reports, I'm going to come to contacts on the left. And then if it's not already your default page, you're going to come over here to advanced search. So from here, this is going to kind of take us back to kind of elementary math here, where we got some of those equal tos, greater than. But this time, if I want to know anyone who has that category, I can come over here to type, click on contact, field of category, this time equal to, and then whatever I'm looking for. So if I wanted to see, hey, does anyone have this? I can run that search. And if it's, again, going to populate anything here, it'll populate on this search result. So again, your advanced search is going to help you find things that are specific. And it looks like here I've got a couple of businesses that are part of this in here. So yes, we do in fact still use that category. Now, what if it's reverse? Maybe I'm sitting here going, does everyone have a category? Or is that really my pinpoint problem right there? I'm going to go ahead and clear this out because I want to again kind of show that first few steps. Type of contact, field of category, and is empty. And again, this time it's going to search for anyone in my database who's missing that field. Now, 166 records, that's too many for me. I don't want to start off with a big old group. I want to kind of work in smaller digestible chunks. So that's where this whole concept of this or and comes into play. I'm going to clear this out again because I want to make it a little bit clearer. I want to make this smaller. I want a smaller group to work with. So this time I'm going to come to contact still again, but I'm going to start with my active clients. So I have status equal to, I'm going to have my value. And again, I only have active client now. I don't have active and active client. Start with that. I'm going to run that just so we can show. I get 326 records, but I want to take this big old pool of ocean here of contacts, get it down to a much more manageable pond. So I'm going to click on and this time again, contact category is empty. Now, I didn't clarify it the first time, but when you use that operand of is empty, this value, for all intents and purposes, pretend it's not there because you're not going to actually put a value in here. We're just trying to find everything that's missing. So I'm going to go ahead and click run. And we're going to drop down to a much more manageable 31 records. So from here, again, this is where we can get that list of saying, okay, here's what I need to start off with. Here's where I need to get that cleanup going. But the good news is if I know for a fact that, hey, this person, let me just click on one more. We'll say Barry here. So I've got a couple of contacts here. If I know for a fact all of those should have the same category, I can highlight those 4 that I feel are the same, come over to contact options, and now this is where I can have this bulk action. So again, if I feel like, hey, their contact category should reflect AAA, which again, this is a customized list, so yours might be a little bit different, I can change that contact category, give it a few moments, but now if I run that same search again, contact status equal to active client, and again, your list might be a little bit different, but that's perfectly fine. Contact category equal to, is empty, run that list. And originally I had 31, I'm now down to that 27. And I know Phoebe was my first one, Phoebe's no longer here. So again, that was just an easier way. If I know they have that common category, status, source, anything along those lines, those are all those bulk actions. So if there's any kind of cleanup where you sit there and go, I don't want to go contact by contact by contact, please don't make me, Catherine. You really want to get it to this advanced search page, highlight those that are applicable, or all in some cases, come over to contact options, bulk actions, and then this is again where you can update category. You can do source, referred by, status, servicing or writing advisor. Even permissions can come over down here, role assignments. So there's quite a bit that you can do in bulk. Now, what about those fields like tax ID, where obviously it's not going to have the same value? No one should have a matching one here where it's the exact same for all 7 records that are missing one here. And maybe I also have statuses I want to clean up and categories. As you can see, I've got a bunch of categories missing and sources missing, and their tax ID is apparently also missing. And I don't want to have to go contact by contact. there is an alternative to this, and that's where we're going to introduce our kind of third topic here. So I'm actually going to go back to my name again, or our login, come over here to manage your account again. This time though, we're actually not going to scroll to the bottom. We're going to scroll about halfway, and you're going to see a section called Manage Templates. Custom Export Templates is where we're going to want to go. So when we click over here, I like to call this my DIY report. And that's because when I click on new, I'm going to name it first. I'm just going to call it 2021 cleanup. Not too creative there, but that way I know exactly what it is, my 2021 cleanup. I'm going to come over here, click on at least the first and last name, because I want to know obviously who I'm working with. So my client's first and last name. And again, I want to make sure that they have their status, their category. I also want to make sure their source and tax ID is there. Now, something else that, again, just depends on really what you're looking for, but if you have to worry about something like RMDs where there's an age of 72 that comes into effect, and you want to know a search that has that age, you obviously want to make sure that date of birth is available. So if that's another field I want to make sure that's filled in, go ahead and just check that off. Now, this again is entirely up to you on what you want to put in here. If you also want to double check that, hey, I have a primary email, phone, and address on file, I can check these off as well. If I want to make sure that those applicable keywords are there, then I can check that off as well. So as you can see, there's quite a few options. And again, the reason why I call it that DIY is because you get to pick what you want on here. So I'm going to leave mine a little bit more basic, just so we can see what that looks like. I'm going to save it. And from here, really what this is think of these rows as the columns in your Excel. So if I want date of birth as that third column, I want status above category, that looks good. If I like it this way, I'm going to go ahead and save that now. So it's just taking it so you don't have to resort it when you get it to an Excel, it's just there when we have it. So building it out is part one, actually running it against clients is part two. So again, I've got my 2021 cleanup. And again, the whole purpose of this is I can reuse it many times. That's why we have it as that template. But now I'm going to come back to contacts and I'm going to run that search again. Now, technically, I could have made it easier on myself and I could have saved this as kind of a quick list where it's like a cleanup 2021 tax throughout the year, something like that. But that's, again, just an extra step that's optional for you. Don't feel like you have to do it. But over here, again, I got my contact status equal to active client. Then I'm going to do contact again. Let's do tax ID is empty. And again, ignore the value field. Click run. I got my 7 records again. I'm going to highlight all 7, select all 7, and I'm going to come over to contact options again. Now, I know we're going to kind of get into a rhythm where we're going to head on down to bulk actions, but that's not the case. We're going to go one up here and click on custom exports instead. So I'm going to click on that here. And at this point, if you have multiple custom exports that you've created in the back, this is where you're going to have that option to say, okay, well, which one are you running right now? If you've never built one, good news is the first one you have will be the only option. So in here, we've got our 2021 cleanup. I'm going to run that custom export. And at the bottom here, just gave me that pop-up. Give it a second here to load. And from here, this is where I have that now populated in my Excel. Now, again, I had those tax IDs missing. I had those sources I knew were missing, and a couple of them were also missing category, but I'm also, looks like I'm missing date of birth and things like that. So the main reason why I often find custom exports might be that better step, or kind of that easier step, I should say, is because if you update this Excel spreadsheet, I update their source, their tax ID, the category, their date of birth. If I update all 4 of those fields, that again is something I can do in Excel. Maybe I'm more efficient in it. But the great news is if you update it here, you can actually take this spreadsheet, reach out to our support team and ask for a secure link, in which case you can then upload this Excel into that secure link, and we can actually update those fields in bulk for you. So again, if you find yourself saying, oh, I can relate to this easily, I've got a lot of contacts missing all of those columns, then that again is maybe that alternative and better option for you in terms of cleaning up that data. Now, the one thing I'm going to always stress here though, do not delete column A. Column A is what we mark as our ID, kind of unique identifier for that kind of contact if you delete it. What this is basically saying to us is that these are brand new names that are not in the database. So when you delete this and you send it to us and we don't have that ID, now all of a sudden we have a bunch of duplicates. So don't cause more issues for yourself in the process of cleaning up. But again, this is an option for you if, again, you have multiple fields and you just find that easier for you. Now, speaking of duplicate contacts, though, this is something that we as humans, it just kind of comes about. Sometimes we don't realize that, hey, I added the contact, my coworker also added it, and there was just a miscommunication. But duplicate contacts do happen. Again, we're human, it's bound to make mistakes, but is there a way to find these duplicates, right? And the answer is, of course. We can definitely find this through reports. So reports on the left, and then if we come just a little bit further down, we're going to see contact reports, and then we're going to see contacts by duplicate name. So go ahead and click on that here. And from here, this is going to give us anyone who has the same first and last name. Now, because of that, obviously the first two contacts that we have here, these are two unique individuals. There's a junior and a third. So obviously we're going to have situations like that pop in here. But something that we see right below here, we have two Sarah Jones, we have two Bruce Waynes, and I know for a fact I only have one Sarah Jones contact and one Bruce Wayne contact. I don't want duplicates to exist in my CRM. That can cause miscommunications amongst us in the office. I might be adding activities and notes to one. Again, someone else might be adding activities and notes to another. So we want to prevent that from continuing as far as into the future, and then as well as maybe just preventing it right from the get-go. So let me just go over that again really quick. So reports on the left, come on down to contact reports, and then contacts by duplicate name. And if you find anyone who is, again, maybe just duplicated, like I know for a fact, I only have one Bruce Wayne, I'm going to go ahead and combine from this page. So this again is something that was new that occurred over the last couple months. Again, previously you used to have to send a search, go to bulk actions, combine the contacts, but now I just highlight the two that are the same, come on over here to combine, and this is where I'm going to say, hey, which one do I really want to keep? Now, this is really important as far as like those one fields, so statuses, categories, source. If I pick this one that has not specified, that status of not specified is what's going to be kind of the go-to, the kept one, I should say. So I obviously want this one. If I'm ever not sure which one actually has more information filled out, and just I want to keep those one fields, feel free to use the command or control, depending on what kind of computer you're on, and then the right click on your mouse. And if you do that, it's actually going to go ahead and open up a new tab. And then this is where we can take a look at those contacts. So we can come over here and go, all right, this one looks really lengthy here. I've got all that detail. All right, this one has one email. So I clearly can tell which one I'm trying to keep. So this is the one I want to keep. I'm going to come again over to combine. Come on over here to active client, click combine. And then this is where I'll get a pop-up saying, hey, you'll be notified when the combine is completed. So it's just running in the background. So again, if I find another duplicate, I can come over here, do the same thing, click combine. Again, pick my prominent one I want to keep, my primary, click to Bennett, click combine, and again, it's going to run in the background. So always, I recommend doing this kind of just once a month, just to be safe, just to see, hey, has anyone new popped on this list that shouldn't? Or hey, do we have something like this? Now, one other thing to be aware of, if I did have two Sarahs that maybe one I spelt with an H and one I did not, they will not populate on this list because again, that first and last name does not match exactly. So if we are afraid that maybe we spelt names incorrectly, that is where I'm just going to say, come up here to search. And if you do find that, oops, I do have two, you can always go kind of the old school way of combining through the contact options. But again, that's it, just if you do have that kind of fear or if you do notice that as you go through it that there are duplicates. But again, this is just something that really does pop up and it can be effective to really pop in. Now I do want to hop back over to my PowerPoint just to make sure. So we've gone over again how to bulk change. You can always just click delete and apply that value in bulk. Notes by contact report, again, very helpful in terms of kind of helping us define maybe what categories we use to which ones have not been used in a full year. And then advanced searching help us find fields that are specific and maybe some values are incorrect, as well as finding missing fields. Now, again, that advanced searching, if we're afraid maybe we forgot to mark someone as deceased or forgot to mark them as inactive, again, that is a field that is something you can do in bulk. So don't be afraid to run those advanced search to make sure your contacts are as accurate as possible. And then custom exports, again, those were where we can come in here and maybe do multiple fields in bulk. And then again, you can always send that to us. And the last thing we actually just went over was that duplicate contact report. And again, that's going to help us find anyone who has the exact same first and last name that we can combine from that page. So the next one here, this past due activities, actually leads perfectly into kind of this ongoing cleanup that you should really have as options, I should say, in terms of 2021. So let me hop back in here. And this time we're actually going to come back to the today page. And it's actually almost blaringly obvious in front of us that there is a button here for past due. Now, when it comes to activities, we really should be completing these activities as soon as possible. So this morning, it looks like I had a meeting here. It was a little bit of odd time here. But if this had already been completed, I should come over here and mark that as complete. If they no-showed me, if it got rescheduled, anything like that, that is still where I should take some kind of action versus it just staying open and going into an abyss of past due activities. So again, you should be completing these activities as soon as you can. Now, do I get it that things happen? Of course they do. Life is not perfect, but I should always at least pop into this past due to make sure I didn't forget about anything, as well as to close out some of that 2020. Again, I don't want to think about that year anymore. I want all of those activities closed out. So from here, this is where I can always bulk complete. I can bulk reschedule. I can do, again, kind of those updates from here. So I know for a fact I'm also a user in this database, and I want to come over here and see if I have anything, which I have 6 past due activities that I know I've done all of those. So this is where I can come over here, bulk, again, just this little tiny box at the top here, highlights all 6 of these. I can then come to activity options, come on down to complete, and at this point in time, it's going to bulk complete them. So this is really a good spot as far as if I fell behind, it doesn't mean I have to stay behind because I can always, again, bulk complete them. Now, of course, always remember when you complete an activity, it is going to then create it as a note that date, time, and user stamps when it's been completed. So even though that first one had a date of November 3rd, because I just completed it today, January 7th, it's going to have a date of today. So that's why I really stress, try to complete them as soon as they happen, or at least as close to when it actually happened. But when in doubt, try not to stay behind, come over here to this past due. So again, complete. That's my first kind of tip as far as ongoing into 2021 to make sure you have your database as clean and as effective as possible. Now, that's of course not the only thing we can really do. Again, as time goes on, our contact information changes. We have values that of course have to be updated, statuses maybe from prospect to client or client to inactive or deceased. We might also have referrals that we have to update in here, keywords, tag groups, things like that. And it can be a lot to really remember. So that's one of these things where it is optional, of course, but maybe a workflow could help with that. So if that is something that, again, you can kind of relate to, you're like, ooh, every time we do this, I forget about all of this. A workflow is an option. Now, before I actually hop really back there, I do want to come up to this little question mark at the top. Come on over to our help desk because there is actually kind of a twofold answer here as to why it's helpful. Now I'm going to just search cleanup, but this second option here, this is a how to handle cleanup. And this is, again, just a good reminder of all of the topics I've already gone over. But at the very bottom, there is actually an example of a quarterly contact cleanup workflow. So again, if your job is really to spearhead 2021 to the best way possible, this might be that first step that you actually need, is to really kind of create that checklist. Yes, I've done this. Yes, I've done that. Yes, I've done that. And that way you have it ongoing again for you. Don't feel like you have to do this though. Again, workflows are one of those things that you really either love them or it's one of those things you're just not sure about, but they're there if you need them. Now, are you limited to the quarterly contact cleanup workflow? Of course not. You can create whatever workflows pop up with each scenario. So again, I'm going to hop back over here. And as far as workflows go, I do recommend starting with your name again and then manage your account. But a little bit further down, you're going to see workflow templates. This is where you're going to want to go to create those workflows. So if you have something like, no one wants to talk about it, but client death workflow, maybe we have more of an onboarding a client workflow, much more positive, right? But those are, again, situations that we come across throughout the year that have an effect on the data in the system. So if every time someone passes away, I have to update fields in the CRM, but I also have to worry about updating fields somewhere else, maybe in a third-party integration or something like that, this is where we can have that, again, that checklist created. But to make it even easier on us, if we have workflows like this where it's based off of a situation, that's where even another template can come into play with automation templates. So I did actually have someone reach out to me earlier in the week regarding more of like a status change, whether that's again from a prospect to a client, or again, the top we don't want to talk about, whether a client leaves us willingly or unwillingly. That could trigger a workflow. Again, it's something that, hey, we know for a fact we need to change the status, but everything else flies out the window. I need a reminder about that. This is where that automation does a little bit of the work for us in the background. All it's saying here is that if I change a status, I want that workflow to link specifically when either one of those scenarios occur. So this again is just that little extra piece that might just really be there for us, so that way we don't have a bunch of data that's backing up and then 3 months later we go, oops, I forgot to update all of these other things because I didn't have that workflow triggering. So again, it's as simple really as figuring out, hey, it's a status change, link the workflow, okay, what conditions do you want it in? But again, it really all boils back down to your managed database list. If I only have active clients and not specified, I can't have something like this triggering because I don't have a deceased or inactive client status for me to trigger it or change it to. So it's all going full circle here. Really start and build out the managed database list as robust as possible. And that's really where you're going to start to see searching made easier. You're going to start to see your reports getting a little bit easier to find. And this again is where you can start rolling out kind of those extra features of workflows and automations. So it's kind of one of those build up to it, and then everything else will actually kind of fall into place as it goes through. So just wanted to throw that out there. Again, this is completely optional. Do not feel obligated to do that. But just one more thing that I've seen as another option. If you've tried workflows, and again, they're not for you, I'm not going to try to shove you in that direction, of course, but maybe even just having something like a repeating activity once a quarter to say, hey, try to clean up here. Double check, make sure everything's as accurate as possible, so that way I don't have, again, someone who's inactive on a mailing list with my update information.
Thanks so much for joining us today for this particular session. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to give us a call at 800-206-5030, option 3 for support, or just shoot us an email over to support@redtailtechnology.com. Thanks a lot and have a great day.